Chapter 2: The Reality of Heaven. Let's pause now and examine how real heaven is. While all the verses we quoted are true, many modern people have difficulty believing in a spiritual world. Even some Christians tend to think that the Bible's description of heaven is so symbolic and so indefinite that there's no telling whether it exists in any real, tangible way. So, let's start at the beginning. Where is heaven? Is there actually an indescribably beautiful spiritual realm where the Lord Himself dwells? Is it literally populated by exalted spiritual beings called angels? Is heaven a solid reality, or is it just some ethereal concept? Is the hope of the afterlife, as the skeptics insist, simply a nebulous, pie-in-the-sky hope? And where is heaven? These are real questions that require serious answers. Heaven is almost invariably thought of as being somewhere above us. The Apostle Paul said, "I was caught up to the third heaven. I was caught up to paradise." 2 Corinthians 12, verse 2 and 4 NLT. Paul also referred to the heavenly city as the Jerusalem above. Galatians 4, verse 26, New King James Version. But where exactly is it? And what exactly did Paul mean by the third heaven? The Bible speaks of heaven in three different ways. The first heaven is the sky, the earth's atmosphere. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth and the open firmament of heaven." Genesis 1, verse 20, King James Version. The second heaven is the vastness of outer space where the stars are. "You made the heavens, even the highest heavens, and all their starry host." Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 6 NIV. The third heaven, which is beyond these, is paradise, where God dwells. As Moses prayed, "Look down from heaven, your holy dwelling place, and bless your people Israel." Deuteronomy 26, verse 15 NIV. Is heaven in the clouds? Many people have the idea that heaven is some indefinite dreamscape of fluffy clouds. This rather unappealing of heaven is a floating weightlessly on cottony clouds playing harps. This conclusion may be a misinterpretation of verses about Christ's return to earth when He gathers the saved together. "And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven." Matthew 24, verse 30 NLT. "Behold, He cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see Him." Revelation 1, verse 7, King James Version. "Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 17, New King James Version. These verses say that when Jesus returns, He will appear above the earth. We who live in that day will meet Him in the clouds, in the air. But that's not our destination. It's simply where we'll rendezvous with Him. Once we have joined Him, Jesus takes us to heaven. Heaven above the stars. Many Christians believe that heaven is somewhere out among the stars, some unfathomable distance away. Job asked, "Is not God in the height of heaven?" Job 22, verse 12, New King James Version. Yes, He is, but how high up and how far out, no one knows. The following hymn, written 2.5 centuries ago, places it beyond the edges of our solar system. "Absent from flesh, then rise, my soul, where feet nor wings could never climb. Beyond the heavens, where planets roll, measuring the cares and joys of time, absent from flesh, O blissful thoughts, by Isaac Watts, before 1748. The following 100-year-old hymn spectacularly places the heavenly city among the stars. There's a city of lights mid the stars, we are told, where they know not a sorrow or care, but the gates are of pearl, and the streets are of gold, and the building exceedingly fair. The City of Lights, by A. S. Kafer, published 1911. Other Christians believe that heaven is even farther out, beyond the most distant edge of the physical universe. The idea that God's throne is above the stars is hinted at in this description of the devil's futile ambition. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Isaiah 14 verse 13, New King James Version. However, the stars of God here are an allegorical reference to angels. God asked Job, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Job 38, verses 4 and verse 7, New King James Version. How far is heaven? So how far away is heaven? Many Christians have traditionally assumed that the following verse is describing Jesus in the kingdom of heaven. Thine eyes shall see the King in his beauty. They shall behold the land that is very far off. Isaiah 33, verse 17, King James Version. However, the famous preacher Charles Spurgeon, from 1834 to 1892, disagreed with this interpretation, saying, between earth and heaven there is but a fine partition. Heaven is much nearer than we think. I question if the land that is very far off is a true name for heaven, as it not an extended kingdom on earth that was intended by the prophet rather than the celestial home. Heaven is by no means the far country, for it is the Father's house. Charles Spurgeon. D.L. Moody, from 1837 to 1899, was of a similar opinion. We talk about heaven being so far away. It is within speaking distance of those who belong there. D.L. Moody. The scriptures seem to bear this out. Paul said that God is not far from any one of us, for in him we live and move and exist. Acts 17, verse 27 to 28, NLT. And David said in the Psalms, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. Psalm 139, verse 7 through 8, NIV. God lives in eternity. King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, said of God that heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain him. 2 Chronicles 2, verse 6, New King James Version. The evidence, therefore, points to the fact that God inhabits a timeless spiritual dimension outside of, but coexisting with, our present space-time continuum. For thus says the high and lofty, one who inhabits eternity, whose name is holy, I dwell in the high and holy place with him who has a contrite and humble spirit. Isaiah 57, verse 15, New King James Version. So where is this high and holy place, where eternity rules and time has no meaning? In modern terms, we would say that God and the inhabitants of heaven are in another dimension. Heaven in another dimension. Scientists used to state with utter certainty that there were only four dimensions: length, height, width, and time. Together, these were known as space-time. Christians and other spiritually minded people insisted that there was a fifth dimension, the spiritual realm. It couldn't be perceived with our limited senses because it was above and beyond the plane of four-dimensional physical matter. Mid the rapturous glories of heaven, on a mortal and beautiful plain, all the ransomed will joyfully gather, never more to part again. Joyful Meeting in Glory by Daniel S. Warner, published 1911. Secular scientists, however, argued that this temporal physical world was the entire reality, that the Christian's hope of unending life in heaven was born merely of a childish fear of dying. But God tells us differently. I am the Lord, the maker of all things, who stretches out the heavens, who spreads out the earth by himself, who overthrows the learning of the wise and turns it into nonsense. Isaiah 44, verse 24 through 25, NIV. Sure enough, in the late 1960s, these same skeptics, in their effort to understand how our universe works, came to the astonishing conclusion that reality consisted of no less than 26 dimensions containing unphysical particle states, all coexisting with our four-dimensional physical realm. This, the bosonic string theory, was later downgraded to 11 dimensions, 7 of which are rolled up at the subatomic level. Other physicists postulate that the matter and energy that make up our visible universe account for only 4% of all matter and energy. They theorize that unseen dark matter makes up 96% of our universe. The fact that this unphysical matter is not detectable doesn't bother them. It makes sense mathematically, seems to explain why gravity is so weak and therefore accepted. Other physicists, however, reject this theory. They propose that hypothetical gravitons produce gravity in another dimension and that small amounts of it leak into our reality from there. Please stay with me for a moment. Still, other theoretical physicists now speculate that when the so-called Big Bang occurred, its expansion happened at different speeds, causing an almost infinite number of multiverses, like self-contained bubbles, to come into being. They theorize that separate universes formed, likely with different laws governing their matter and energy. Here's the point. As unbelievable as some of these hypotheses sound to the average person, and even to other physicists, some of the world's most respected, intelligent thinkers take them seriously. Yet they deny the possibility of a single spiritual dimension. As the scriptures say, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and discard the intelligence of the intelligent. So where does this leave the philosophers, the scholars, and the world's brilliant debaters? God has made the wisdom of this world look foolish. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 18 to 21 NLT. This is not to say that these multidimensional theories aren't true. The point here is that the theoreticians have come a long way since the days when they insisted we live in a simple four-dimensional universe. A confident hope. Paul asked King Agrippa, why does it seem incredible to any of you that God can raise the dead? Acts 26, verse 18, NLT. Given what physicists believe, we may ask, why does it seem incredible that there is an eternal, omnipotent God who created all this? Why does it seem incredible that he exists undetected by mortal eyes in another dimension? Why does it seem incredible that God can transform mortals into immortals and give them eternal life? The Christian's hope is quite reasonable. I am not insane, most excellent Festus, Paul replied. What I am saying is true and reasonable. Acts 26 verse 25 NIV. We can trust the word of God. We can trust the words of Jesus. He hasn't given us false promises. He would have told us if heaven weren't true. In fact, Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you." John 14 verse 2, New King James Version. So God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It leads us through the curtain in God's inner sanctuary. Hebrews 6, verses 18 through 19 NLT. The good news is that we don't have to understand theoretical physics to respond to the spiritual hunger we feel inside. Have you not felt yearnings after the infinite, hungerings which bread cannot satisfy, thirstings which a river cannot quench? Well then, if you have such longings as these, surely there must be a provision to meet them. With my thirstings, my longings, my mysterious instincts, there is a God somewhere. There is a heaven somewhere. There is an atonement somewhere. There is a fullness somewhere to meet my emptiness. Man wants a shelter. There must be a shelter. Charles Spurgeon.